Well, Talking Church, it has been an amazing year in 2024, and I want to wish you a Merry Christmas as this is Christmas week, so I won't be having an episode with a guest, but I do want to go over 2024 stats. I know there's people who've been listening since the very beginning over 3 years ago and those who are brand new, and it's just exciting for me to share. There's loyal listeners, thousands of people that are listening every single month. We just posted our Spotify Wrapped, and almost 2,000 of you, it was in your top 10 podcasts that you listened to. So I want to say thank you to that. There's more on Apple and on YouTube as well. So several thousand people that consider this one of their favorite podcasts. And I just want to say thank you for that. All the pastors, church leaders, people from our church, from other churches that love listening and love hearing from great guests. And I just want to share some highlights from the podcast as well as from River Valley Network, because if you've been listening for a while, you know that this podcast is produced by the River Valley Network from River Valley Church. We are here to equip and encourage and support and resource pastors all around the country and around the world. And I'll give you a little bit of insight into what's coming up with that, but just want to share all the amazing things that God has done through the network and through all of what he's doing with Talking Church and the podcast, starting with our Generosity Accelerators. We hosted 12 events in 2024, and we were in Alabama, we went to Arkansas, we were in North Texas, Dallas area, we were in New York, Colorado, Washington State, Southern California. We did one in Minnesota. We went to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, you have a great city, but your airport is just tough. But I just heard that you're getting a new airport, so congratulations. Oregon, okay, Oregon, you win the most on time because we were starting at 9:30, but by 9 o'clock, everyone in Oregon was there. I mean, the whole state basically showed up. They were there on time. Compared to Southern California, by the time we started our event, it was like nobody was there. It was like your second service at church. Finally, the couple hundred pastors showed up and we were grateful for them. But Oregon, great job for being on time. And then lastly, we did one in the Pendle area at Valley Forge. And it was an awesome event. We saw over 1,500, close to 1,600 people, 654 churches get trained in Generosity Accelerators. Those are the things that we do, the events, one-day events we do to help people and churches grow in the area of generosity. If you have not been a part of that and you're a pastor and church leader, want to encourage you to join us for one of our Generosity Accelerators in 2025. We've got a number of locations scheduled already, and we have many more that we're scheduling. We are in talks right now doing one at the Museum of the Bible in DC, Mississippi, Louisiana, all over. I think we're going to Spokane. We're trying to get to Southern Florida. I mean, there's a lot of other destinations we're in talks to. We might actually have our first international accelerators as well in Australia, in Kenya, potentially even in Swaziland. So we're working out some of those details for the first part of the year, second part of the year. Don't quote me on them, but if you see them come up, you heard it here first. But that's just amazing to see 650 churches that we're training in the area of generosity that represents tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that we're going to be raising over the next several years for Kingdom Builders. So that's an incredible celebration as we finish off this year. In terms of the podcast, I just want to say thank you for listening. We grew our audio downloads by over 30%, almost 20,000 more audio downloads this year from last year, which is really exciting. And video downloads, I mean, was crazy, blew us away that we had, think about this is crazy. In 2023, there was 11,000 hours of watch time on Talking Church. And in 2024, there was 52,000 hours of watch time. So almost 5 times the watch time on Talking Church on YouTube, which is just mind-blowing to me. And some of the top episodes we had was George Camel, no surprise. Dr. Linda Seiler shared her testimony, which was super powerful. We have John Sell and Jenna Barrientos at number 3. They had 11,000 views on their episode, and I loved having them. I text with John Sell all the time. He's just a great guy and is leading all around the world. And that was over 300% growth and added 2,500 new subscribers to Talking Church. So if you're one of those new ones, we just want to say thank you for listening. And we've had a couple shorts that have gone viral on Instagram. Dave Ramsey's morning routine, I think, is coming up on 1 million views. But moving to Instagram, we had over 17 million views on our Instagram Reels. That's right, 17 million views, which is crazy to think about that just in this year, that many people have seen our Reels. And our number 1 Reel was from Pastor Lindsay Willis, where she talked about marriage does not solve loneliness. Why don't we listen or watch this clip together? Over 4.8 million views on Instagram.
Marriage doesn't solve loneliness. To me, loneliness is a lack of understanding of who I am and what God wants to do in and through me. If we ever think that someone other than Jesus completes us, no, he's the one that completes me. A husband doesn't complete me. A position doesn't complete me. Wealth doesn't complete me. He completes me.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for that. I know that message is resonating with people, and I still get notifications every single day that people are watching that. And we've had 5 reels this year hit 1 million views, which is crazy. Martha Tennyson had 2 reels hit 1 million views, which is amazing. If you haven't watched that episode, I think we titled it Lessons from a Spirit-Filled Grandma or something like that. My grandma had 500,000 views, Don't Live Halfway in Between. And Linda Seiler, her story had 1 million views early in the year. It feels like last year, but early in the year, Ryan Skoog's reel, and maybe it's been so long, had 1.7 million views. Why don't we watch this together? The Gulag Prayer back from last January. Take a listen to this.
Probably one of my favorite stories I've ever heard. A friend of mine was on a mission trip connected to this, and they were doing this beautifully redemptive thing where they're going to take stones from a Russian gulag and actually use them to build a church. Then they're digging around, and there's a canister that one of them found. And they open up the canister, and there's a note inside the canister. And they bring it to the pastor so he could read it. And the pastor starts just bawling, just weeping. What the note said is, we are a community of believers who are being forced to take the stones of our church and turn them into our own prison where we will die. But we're putting a prayer out to the Lord that one day these stones will one day be a church again. And this is like decades later. And so what we are as people of prayer is sending canisters out into the future of prayers that God will answer long after our life.
You can see why that reel got so many views. It's an amazing story. And I mean, it's about a Russian gulag and a church. Come on, you can't get much better than that. But 17 million views on Instagram. I'm blown away. I just want to say thank you for all of that. Combined between all of the platforms, my goal was to cross 250,000 audio downloads and video downloads. And we surpassed that, over 300,000 downloads, video views on just Talking Church alone. That doesn't include shorts. That doesn't include Instagram Reels. That's just people listening to the long form episodes. And so I'm blown away by that. I reached my goal. I can check it off the list, but now I'm trying to figure out what my goals are going to be for 2025 because it's far beyond what I ever thought, but I'm very excited for all that God's going to do. And we had just a number of different guests. I mentioned Ryan Skoog from the clip we watched. We had Russell Hunter, Chris Durso, Dr. Phil Mayo talking about Revelation, George Camel, Ryan Van Way shared his story about how he overcame addiction and coming out of a motorcycle club, and incredible story if you've not seen that with Ryan Van Way. Dr. Gil Ferguson talked about child development and phones. We had Alicia Gelhar and Portia Allen in April. We played some messages from Nathan Finocchio. We're going to have him on in 2025, already working with that. Spoiler alert, he might be at conference. Micah McDonald, who I just saw today. He's a great guy. Ryan Williams and Kanan Bakah, my new friend. If you've not heard Kanan lead worship, he is incredibly anointed. He wrote with our team our song Free Indeed on River Valley Worship's album. He was one of the writers for that. My friend Aaron Burke and Brandon Martinelli, Dr. Linda Seiler, Tom Trzynski was on, Dr. Alan Tennyson, Sammy Rodriguez, and Pastor Rob did a session on the election. And it'd be interesting to go back and listen to that now post-election to see how some of those things played out. But I think there were some prophetic things there. I mentioned the Johnsel and Jenna episode that was really impactful as well. I want to let you know that River Valley Conference is making a big change, and I don't think I can announce what that change is yet, but I'm so excited. I've never been more excited for River Valley Conference. We did it in July this year in 2024, and we're moving it back to June, which that's not the big announcement, but we're so excited. I have a brainstorm meeting coming up right after I record this, and I'm very excited for it. So be paying attention. It's the biggest change we've ever done. It's the biggest shift we've ever done in River Valley Conference, and I think it's going to be the best thing for it. And I'm just going to guarantee this. I know it's a lot to put it out there on video. I'm guaranteeing you that River Valley Conference is going to sell out, and I think it's going to sell out well before June. So make sure to get your tickets now before everything changes and before everyone's excited to go. You heard it here first. Sign up for River Valley Conference in June. It's going to be amazing. In August, we had Jackie Brewster. I also had my sabbatical, and I don't feel like I've talked about my sabbatical a lot on the podcast, but it was amazing. We went all over. We were 3 weeks in Europe, spent a month in Montana, and it was just a huge blessing to get away, to experience all of God's amazing creation, beautiful architecture. I will say my mind shifted about week 2 and week 3. The 3rd and 4th week of sabbatical, I don't think I've ever had more peace in my life than week 3 and week 4. And I saw a post that was like, are sabbaticals even important? And I commented, I'm like, yes, they're incredibly important. I just experienced it. I felt like I became somebody different. I really believe that I was able to get out of the daily tasks of my life and really think about my future and spend time with my wife. And just, it was just an incredible, incredible time. And so I couldn't recommend that more. You got to earn it though. You can't take a sabbatical after, 2 months. We had one pastor asked us on a generosity accelerator. He said, I oversee multiple different pastors in my district here. And he said, one of my pastors asked for an 11-month sabbatical. We said, 11 months? How long has he been in ministry? He said, well, he's been in ministry for 9 months. We said, I don't think he's cut out for ministry. He doesn't get an 11-month sabbatical for only being there 9 months. So you got to earn it, but take it, enjoy it, and go see the world. It's beautiful. We saw a grizzly bear, I don't know, probably 10 feet from us in Glacier National Park. And then the next week, someone was attacked by a grizzly bear on that same trail. So I was very grateful that I was not that person, but it happened. In September, I got back. We had some amazing accelerators. Had my friend Ebenezer on the podcast. I think I'm going to be on his podcast soon. So Shaping the Culture is that one. October, Catherine Wolf's episode. If you did not listen to Catherine Wolf, she is so inspiring. I mean, you have no excuses in your life if you are saying, oh, it's too hard, I can't do this. Catherine had a stroke and has been dealing with a disability ever since. And it hasn't stopped her one bit. And she talked about resilience and how she dealt with the struggle and has found hope in it. Her Instagram is Hope Heals, and she lives that out. And so amazing episode. There's also some awesome Instagram clips from there that inspired a lot of people. Dr. Joel Muddamalle, we talked about making theology great again, and he'll be with us next year at our Sparkle Women's Conference. We'll have him on the podcast in person. Got to connect with Russell Johnson. I wanted to have him on the podcast for a while. I met him at an event in Springfield and then had him on the podcast when we were out in Seattle. And that was a great episode on handling criticism. Talked with attorney Ryan Bangert, who talked about what pastors can talk about legally from the pulpit. And we'll see, maybe with President Trump, the Johnson Amendment will change. Maybe it won't. We'll see. Had a couple episodes talking about abortion. Aniela and Chris and Jeff, Aniela and Jeff, sorry, they were on the podcast and shared their testimonies. And I actually had a call with someone from our church, and she just shared how impactful that was because she had that same testimony. And so I love how that they're helping people walking through that. My friend John Rush, he was on the podcast, and he was my brother. I can't remember. He was expressing when he met John for the first time, and John kind of just walked into his office as we were doing a tour, and he just was talking about our job titles and everything. And I feel like Connor was kind of thrown for a loop a little bit by John, because John is a larger than life character, reaching people through video games, and has started a ministry there and recently left Elevation and is just doing amazing things in video games, working with Theos U. And you probably saw some of his clips about video games. Maybe they're controversial opinions, but if you're a Fortnite player, go play with John. I think I've only played Fortnite once in my life, but he's the expert of all of that. And then in December, we had Greg Reed and Dave, and they were at Christ Fellowship, the biggest church you've never heard of. If you haven't listened to that, they have so much insight, especially on multi-site and on dealing with central versus campus. I mean, they're like 25,000 people on a weekend or more. One of the biggest churches in America. And they both served there for over a decade and have some amazing insights. And I'm just really excited for next year. I just finished up recording some episodes that I'm super excited about that are going to be coming out at the very beginning of the year. Had Bob Hoskins, who's the founder of One Hope. His story is incredible. He's preached the gospel in basically every nation in the world. He's been to every country in the world, and he's preached the gospel basically everywhere. He's been doing ministry for over 80 years. Over 80 years, you heard that right. And he's really a hero of mine. And so that episode is going to be coming out in the first part of January. as well as Jerry Wanda, who's probably the biggest music producer you never heard of, has been a part of, I think, just past 300 million records sold, projects that he's been a part of, whether he produced on them, was a musician on them, or wrote on them. I mean, he's incredible. And so you're not going to want to miss the start of the year. Pastor Rob will be back. We have many guests. I send out on Instagram a lot of different ideas that I have talking about AI, blockchain, how to grow your church in 2025, dealing with family and ministry. So there's so many topics that I'm going to get to. I'm still open to feedback though. If you have ideas, please send them my way. And I'm just really, really excited. I do want to let you know about some of those accelerator dates if you're interested. January 21st will be in Sacramento, March 24th in Nashville, April 8th, Spokane, Washington, May 8th, Washington, D.C. at the Museum of the Bible, May 22nd, New Orleans, June 11th here in Minnesota, October 28th in Louisville, Kentucky, not Louisville, Louisville, October 30th in Mississippi, and then River Valley Conference, June 9th and 10th. Like I said, it's going to sell out. You want to be there. We'll have roundtables. We had 16 pastors with us this year for our campus pastor, or 16 churches with us this year for our campus pastor and executive pastor roundtable. And really, it was just a great year. I know it's kind of the highlights. There's amazing things. Personally, there's been huge things that have happened in my life that have been incredible highs and incredible lows. And I'm excited to update you all as you listen to the podcast and hear more about that. But I just want to say thank you to all those who've prayed for me, who prayed for my wife and I, as we are just excited to grow our family and do what God is asking us to do as we're on this ministry journey. I know many of you are on this journey as well. You're ministering to people in your communities around the world. And again, I just want to say thank you for listening. I just want to include you in this. I don't mean this to be a time to brag or talk about how good I am. I'm blown away by it. It's listeners like you that are why I do this. And so as I've met you at conferences, as I meet you in different places, as you message me and share episodes that have impacted you, it truly, truly means the world. And I'm just excited for 2025. I'm not stopping. And just excited for all God wants to do through Talking Church, through the River Valley Network, and through the influence that we get to oversee. So I hope to see you sometime in person next year, whether it be at a conference, at our conference, at a Generosity Accelerator, or just rubbing shoulders at some sort of church event we're at. For those from our church that are listening, others around the community that have randomly found the podcast that say, I love listening to this and learning things, even if I'm not a pastor. We're grateful you're listening. But here's to 2025. There's a lot of big plans, and I hope you have an amazing Christmas, if it's happened already or not, and an amazing New Year, and we'll see you back with some great episodes in 2025. What a year it's been for Talking Church. Thank you so much for being a listener.